Hey guys, how are ya? Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Steven. It's October 3rd. Welcome to Vlogtober Day 3. It is 6:17 in the evening. Nothing has happened today to film for Vlogtober, and I don't want to just make stuff up or waste your time with, well, that's probably going to happen sometime this month, but not today. Nothing's really happening. I went to bed at like midnight last night, which is early for me. Lately, I've been going to bed at like 4 in the morning. I've been playing Starfield all night. But I took a sleep aid just to make sure I get to sleep. Man, oh man, that had me out until 11 o'clock this morning. Eleanor is going in my ear, waking me up to get her treats. That's what got me up eventually. But I just hung out around the house all day long. I should have done some housework, but Starfield. So I hung out with the cats, ate a little something, and then played some Starfield. That's all I've done all day long. And I figured I should get out of the house. So I came to the post office to drop off my HOA and my mortgage payment, which I should have sent out a couple days ago, but I was so busy playing Starfield. I still send checks for a couple of things, for my house, for my HOA, and for my mortgage payment. I still find it novel that I have these debts. I find it terribly exciting that I owe all this money. I own my own condo. It still blows my mind because it's still very fresh in my mind that I was living in a minivan in Tampa before I became a flight attendant and ended up having my life. I still find it exciting. So I still write checks for those two things. When the novelty has worn off, and I'm sure it will, I will make automated payments for those things. But for now, I'm still writing checks because I still think it's exciting. But nothing has really happened today at all. So I figured I would look through my comments section for some questions to make a little Q&A. And I did find a couple that were pretty good. If you've not been with me for a long time, if you've been with me forever, these answers to my questions, these questions will be sort of redundant, but there's a lot of people who have joined my channel since I have touched on these topics. So let's start with one question. Then I'm going to pop into the post office, drop off my payments, and then I'm going to head over, I think, to IKEA for a little bite to eat and to walk around and look at things, because I just haven't really left the house for more than a week, except for my little day trip over to Valley of Fire yesterday. If you've not seen that video, it's definitely worth watching if you've never been there before. It's gorgeous. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. But let's start with a quick question. Let's see. Do I use this is Nature Lover. She asked, do I use the eBay app or my computer to sell stuff on eBay? Well, lately I haven't been doing anything on eBay because I've been so lazy. But I use the app on my phone because it's just so easy. I snap pictures with the phone, then I go into the eBay app. They make it very, very easy to type in the description of it, make any checks on terms of item condition, stuff like that. Is it new? Is it used? Blah, blah, blah. And then I literally can just post it from the app and it's done. I can make a listing in 30 seconds if I can find a similar item on eBay as it is. So I find that very, very easy. Also, this is the perennial question. Everybody asks me this over and over and over again, which I understand why. But who takes care of my cats when I'm away for work as a flight attendant for days at a time? The cats take good care of themselves. I set them up for success by making sure they've got their clean litter boxes. I use 3 of those underbed storage boxes from IKEA. They're huge. I use 3 of them as litter boxes. They're huge. They have a whole separate bedroom just for their litter boxes and some cat furniture so they can look out the window. So they have plenty of room to do their business. I have 2 gravity feeders and 2 bowls of food for them. They both like different cat foods. I have 3 water fountains and 2 water bowls just in case the power goes out, and so that they have access to some fresh water. And they have plenty of toys and windows to look out of. I have cameras so I can see what they're doing during the course of the day, if they're safe, if they're comfortable, they're napping. Usually they're just napping. often in places I can't see them with the cameras, but I know what they're doing. So the cats are just fine without me. When I'm home, they do the same stuff they do when I'm not home. Sleep, lick themselves, and eat. So they're just fine without me. I miss them, and I know they miss me when I'm gone. But, yeah, they're fine. They're fine. And Lynn asked me a question, which is probably the meat of this video, which I'll answer later. But she also asked me, why do I like my Sabot Heat more than my Hot Logic Mini? And I think I did a video on this. The Sabot Heat is spelled S-A-B-O-T-H-E-A-T. So if you do a little Google, Stephen Flight Attendant, Sabot Heat, you'll see that video. It's long and tedious, like most of my videos, but the crux of why I like my Sabot Heat more than my Hot Logic Mini is the timer. You plug it in, there's a timer on the cord that flashes, so you know the power is on. I plugged in my Hot Logic Mini in Kansas City in the airport. I had like a 3-hour sit. I plugged it in so I could have some hot food on my layover. I didn't know that the power wasn't working in that outlet until I tried to eat, and my food was still cold. It was miserable. But the timer on the Sabot Heat allows me to set a time length, so it's not sitting there all day. It also lets me adjust the heating level. So I think 1 and 2 might be similar to a Hot Logic Mini, but I can set it up to a 6 if I really want to heat stuff up a little quicker and hotter. Although you do have to be mindful of what container you use at certain heating levels. I'll often use freezer bags, throw those in my Sabot Heat at level 1 or 2. If I set it at like 3 or 4 or 5, my freezer bag's gonna melt. So I have to be mindful of what I use in the Sabot Heat. But that's why I love my Sabot. I love my Sabot Heat. I much prefer it over my Hot Logic Minis, and I'm surprised I don't see more of them on the line. What other question can I answer quickly before I touch on Lynn's other question? Oh, and Tony asked, so the 2 questions that are going to be the meat of this video, I'm going to answer later, are Lynn asked, how and why I became a flight attendant, even though it was not my goal. It was never my goal or aspiration to become a flight attendant. So she wanted to know about my journey to become a flight attendant. I've touched on this before, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes when I'm driving over to IKEA, or maybe while I'm at the IKEA little cafeteria there. And Tony asked, is there anything I would wished I had known before becoming a flight attendant and making it a career? Also, a longer question, a longer answer than I should make while I'm sitting in a parking lot at the post office. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But those are the 2 questions that will be the meat of this video. In the meantime, I've wasted 8 minutes of your time just getting here. So I'll see you in a minute. All right, so I'm sorry, I don't have a tripod. You're being held up by a Diet Pepsi right now. Sorry. But so Lynn's question was how and why I became a flight attendant, even though it was never a goal of mine. Well, honestly, the truth is I just needed a job. My ex-partners, that's a different story, a different video. They broke up with me. I was living in the Tampa area, and I was working. It's like a part-time job, 28 hours a week for $9 an hour. And I really couldn't find more work. Florida was really, really difficult to find a good paying full-time job. It was almost impossible. And so I left their house. I couldn't live with them anymore. I found a house. I was living with like 4 or 5 guys, and they were all in different stages of addiction, and it was really unpleasant and unfortunate, and I really couldn't afford to even live there. I was making so little money. I was living on like $2 a day, honestly, with car insurance, because I had to have insurance on my vehicle, especially in Florida, and gas and all those things. I really couldn't afford to live in an apartment and drive a car, and you have to have a car in Florida. So I ended up seeing a YouTube video where I could live in my van, and I did that. I turned my inside of my little minivan into my house. I had blackout curtains, a little cot, a little butane-fueled stove, and I lived in my minivan. for quite a while, and it was not as sexy as it sounds. It was pretty rough. But a friend of mine knew I was struggling and invited me to move up to Atlanta. He has a huge house in Buckhead, and he offered me the 3rd floor of his house, and so he invited me to live up there, and so I started looking for work before I got up there, and so I started applying for every job I could possibly think of. I applied for a job at every hotel, Neiman Marcus and Saks, of course, because that's my history. It was working mostly at Neiman's and Saks, and I applied for Delta because Atlanta. I didn't like to fly. I was a nervous flyer. I used to cry when flying. If it was any turbulence, I would hold on to the armrests, I would cry, and I'd be praying to a woman I don't believe in. And I was not a good flyer. I hated to fly. But Delta, it's Atlanta. So I applied for Delta. And my friend Steven, who had invited me to move up there, had invited me to Christmas before I moved up there, in his house in the Smoky Mountains. The top of the mountain is the Smoky Mountains. Absolutely magical. And so how could you say no to that? We're driving up to the house in North Carolina, and I was applying for jobs while in the backseat of the car. I was on Indeed. I was everywhere. I was desperately searching for work. And so long story short, I did get a job opportunity to work at Saks Fifth Avenue in their fine jewelry department in Atlanta, which is a very lucrative position in that store. While walking out of that interview, I'm not sure, that's not a very linear story, sorry, but when walking out of that interview, I was kind of depressed. I thought I should have been happier than I was. And this is a very, very potentially a very lucrative position and prestigious position in that store. And I have done it before in Boston. And I walked out thinking I should be really excited. But once again, I'm living in someone else's house. I've been living in a house, working behind a counter for people who don't really care about me. And it was just kind of depressing, but the only thing I had really going for me. And I looked down at my phone while I was waiting for an Uber, and I had received an email from my airline. My friend Steven had said, well, why don't you apply to other airlines if you want to be a flight attendant? Because he had heard I applied for Delta. And I said, I really don't want to be a flight attendant, but I need a job. And so on a whim, he was like, well, apply to other airlines just in case. And so I applied to JetBlue, ironically. They didn't accept me. I applied for American. They sent me an invitation to another interview after I had already passed my training for my current airline. So no thank you. And then my airline said, you know, hey, we'd love to see more of you and, you know, meet you face to face. Would you come to Fort Lauderdale on January 10th? For an interview. And so that's how I ended up getting to my airline. It was definitely a fluke. I had no desire at all to be a flight attendant. And it's kind of funny because so many people desperately want the job. And I kind of just fell into it. It is a natural fit for me. And I really do think I do an okay job. And I love my work. But that's how I ended up accidentally becoming a flight attendant. Funny story just about that Saks Fifth Avenue position. The interview was amazing. I mean, it was a really fun interview, and they were very excited to have me. The HR people at the Saks in Atlanta had contacted the Boston HR department, and the HR director there said, don't let him leave the building no matter what. Like, don't let him leave. Because I was a really good salesperson, and I was really good at Saks. And they were like, don't let him leave. And they offered me the best they possibly could. And I was so excited. And I accepted the position. But I knew I was going to the interview for my airline. So when I was going down to the interview, I told them I needed a couple weeks to prepare to move down to Atlanta and all that stuff. So Saks, they were like, sure, take your time. We're yours. We want you. We're looking forward to having you. So I went to my interview for the airline. And when I got the CJO for the interview, for the airline for training, I called Saks back and I told them, don't judge me. I told them that unfortunately I need more time because my father had a stroke. I don't know where this came from. The lie bubbled out of me, but it was so good. And I sounded very upset. I said, my father had just had a stroke. My mother can't take care of him by herself, so I have to go to Rhode Island and help take care of my father because I don't know how long it's going to be till he gets on his feet. My mother can't do this by herself. I hadn't spoken to my mother in years at that point. And my father, he lives in Oklahoma, but I don't know anything else about him. And they were like, oh my God, we're so sorry. I don't know where this lie came from, but that's what I said. And I just wanted to have a foot in the door, wedged in the door. So in case training didn't work out for me at the airline, that I would have something to fall back on, which was Saks. And they said, sure, take your time as much as you need. No matter what, we're going to have a position for you. Because they really wanted me. And, you know, the shame is, I never called them back. I never told them anything. Yeah, so I'm awful. But I'm not sure why I told you the truth there. Because that's just awful. I lied about something horrible. But to my knowledge, my father has never had a stroke. And my mother's dead. So, let's see. So Tony asked me, is there anything I wished I knew before becoming a flight attendant and making it a career? Wow. Well, yeah, kind of. There's a couple things I really wish I had known. I wish I had known how difficult it would be financially. Because, you know, I was actually in a good position to become a flight attendant. Like, I was used to living on almost nothing. I was living in a minivan. I was eating, if you go to 7-Eleven, they frequently have a special where you get 2 slices of pizza and a big gulp for $2. That was a meal for me. That was like every day I went to 7-Eleven and got pizza and a big gulp. I would go to, you can imagine how loud those people are laughing over there. I would go to CVS and buy 2 cans of beefaroni and keep them in the dashboard of my minivan, where they would get very, very hot in the sun, and I would eat them out of the can. That's where I was living. That's how I was living before I got this job. So I was primed to live on nothing. But if you're looking at joining this career path and becoming a flight attendant, and you're not financially solid with a lot of savings and no bills, definitely, I wish I had known how little money I'd be making. Even at the larger airlines, the legacy airlines, you're not going to make a lot of money. It's good if you start and they say, oh, you're going to start at $27 an hour, $30 an hour. That's not as much money as it sounds. Do you hear that noise? It sounds like a drill, a jackhammer. It's someone pushing a little cart. So financially, it would be devastating. If I had had my old life to start this new career path, I would have been devastated financially. So you can't have any bills. Like, you really can't have any big bills. And you have to be able to live on very, very little. I wish I were more prepared to understand the need for a crash pad. Many times new flight attendants start and they're based somewhere that they don't know. They don't have any experience. Say they're based in Dallas and they're from Boston, or like me, I'm from Boston. I was based in Las Vegas. I knew nothing about Las Vegas. I had nowhere to stay, and in fact, the one place I did think I was gonna stay ended up falling through, and I got very, very lucky to get a horrible crash pad. My first crash pad was horrible, but like, I wish I had known how to prepare for a living situation before, for when I started work after training, because that was really, really traumatic. What else do I wish I had known? I wish I had known how to live without sleep. Without sleep. If you have had children and you've survived little babies crying and feeding every 2 or 3 hours, you're going to be great as a flight attendant. But that's definitely something. What else? But the flip side, what are the other things that were good that I wish I had known about? I would have been so excited about the level of stress. Now, I was so used to having quotas right here. Like, my manager was always saying, Steven, you didn't make your numbers last month. What can we do? Or you made your numbers. How are we going to make it happen next month? You know, there was always like pressure, like, my whole life seemed like it was surrounded by pressure to succeed, to produce, to get the numbers. And this job, there's zero stress, like zero stress. If there's real stress, I'm bringing it upon myself. It's a fantastic job if you don't want stress. If you are feeling stressed as a flight attendant, I have to ask you to check your ego, because the chances are you're making a lot of the stress for yourself. What else would I wish I had known? I don't know. Gee, I think that's really it. I really can't think of anything else that would have been a real deal breaker. Oh, yeah. Is the amount of time you're going to spend away from friends and family. Now, I'm pretty solitary. Most of my family has passed away. I don't have a lot of friends. I certainly don't have any children or anything. So my time is really my own. I don't have to worry about someone's graduation or wedding, or if I'm going to miss the baby's first steps, or there's not a lot of stuff I'm going to miss from you know, a life filled with family and friends and stuff. So it got really loud in here. So yeah, as a new flight attendant, you're going to miss friends' weddings. You're going to miss funerals. You're going to miss Christmas with your family. So you're going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. If that's important to you, vital to you, during your first year or two, then yeah, this is definitely something you have to be aware of, because you'll miss a lot of things in your life. But the flip side of that is you get a lot of time off as a flight attendant. Even as a reserve flight attendant, where I am at the beck and call of my airline, I have at least 12 or 13 days off a month. So that's like having a long weekend every month. Now, in my old life, to get 2 days off in a row was like magic. Something had to happen to get 2 days off in a row. Now, if I want 6 or 7 days off in a row, I just bid for a schedule that allows me that time off. So there's this lots and lots of things that I wish I had known before becoming a flight attendant. But after a very, very short time, any of those concerns kind of go to the wayside and become just part of your everyday. Would it stop me from this career path? Never. I wish I had known. This is something I wish I had known. I wish I had known I'd be so happy in my career. I would have done this 20 years ago. And not to make this video any longer, I kind of have a story about that. I have stories about everything. It was 1999. Picture this, Sicily, 1928. It was 1999. I was working as a makeup artist for Versace, and I saw an ad, I don't know where, in a newspaper or something, for flight attendants for U.S. Airways. And so I was like, I don't know why. I had a wild hair up my butt. I don't know why I applied. I have no idea. Because I told you I didn't want to be a flight attendant. I was afraid to fly. But I had a wild hair up my butt. For some reason, I was like, I'll apply. I interviewed at the Marriott or the Hilton or something in Boston. And the interview went really, really well. They flew me off to Pittsburgh, I think. I think it was Pittsburgh, maybe Philadelphia. And they interviewed me there. And one of the questions, the interviewer was amazing, but one of the questions she said is, what do you love about your current job? I thought that was a fantastic question. And I said, and I started to gush, because if I love my job now, I loved my job as a makeup artist. I was really good. I was a pretty talented makeup artist. I was able to suss out what your what your desires were and add that to reality, which is, you know, sometimes very contrary with your imagination and the reality of what you look like and how you want to present yourself to the world. I was a really good makeup artist, and I love the relationships I'd be able to build in seconds with my clients. And I was just gushing about being a makeup artist and how much I enjoyed it. And the woman who was interviewing me said, I hate to say this, I don't think you would enjoy being a flight attendant as much as you do what you're doing right now. And I took that very personally, and I was crushed by it. But the reality was, that's exactly the truth. I would not have been, at the time, I would not have been happier with the life of a brand new flight attendant. And back then, I don't know what flying was like back then in 1999, because it certainly changed after 9/11. But then again, you think, that was probably summer, autumn of 1999, and then look at what happened in September, you know, 9/11. I would have been furloughed, I would have been fired, I would have been off work, and blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. It all happened at the right time for me. It all happened at the right time for me. But I hope that was an okay answer to the questions. And I think that's it for this video, for Vlogmas, Vlogtober. So I'm going to finish my dinner. I got Swedish meatballs, mashed potatoes, and French fries. Is it Dr. Ellen who is telling me to eat better? Sorry. If you ever have French fries, scoop up some mashed potatoes with some French fries and a little bit of gravy. Oh my God, it's like twice baked potatoes. It's so good. Yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. Fly safe.